Welcome one and all, Nyanko here, and today I am going to be talking about something a little bit different. So I know normally Mondays are for media related things, so like a TV series I've enjoyed, or a game I've played, that kind of thing. But today I decided that I was going to have a bit of a moaning Monday instead of a media Monday, because, and now I know a lot of people will probably agree with me here, but people do not take food allergies seriously enough. That is the main point of this video. So yeah, basically, I am celiac. It started out as just basically gluten intolerance. So like I'd eat pasta or I'd eat bread and I'd get tummy ache, and I'd also get other symptoms. I don't want to go too TMI in case I gross people out, but if you suffer with the same kind of things, you know what they are. I went for a blood test and it was like, you're kind of borderline celiac. So just keep eating gluten. And the thing was, I was getting sicker and sicker and my stomach was hurting me more and more, and I was starting to get more and more symptoms of celiac disease, you see. So I went back to my doctor, got another blood test, and they were like, oh, actually, you do seem to be, again, still on the borderline, but if it's causing you pain, we don't want you to continue suffering. So go and see a dietitian, see what the dietitian says. So I went to my dietitian, okay, and she was like, oh, so considering you're on the borderline, it could be that you're intolerant or it could be that you're mildly celiac, but it's just not enough to show up on the tests. But either way, this is obviously doing damage to you because you're having the pain, you're having several other symptoms, and let's just try and cut gluten out entirely. So I was like, grand, okay, how do I do that? Because as you know, gluten is in pretty much everything, bar a small select few things. So I had to switch to gluten-free flour instead of normal flour to make like pizza dough and bread in general. Luckily for me, a lot of shops now carry a small little gluten-free section, which is wonderful. So I can get like biscuits if I want, I can get bread, and like other bits and bobs so that I can cook and like still enjoy pretty much everything I used to enjoy before. Now, this helped immensely, but there was still another issue ongoing because even though I wasn't getting as much pain, I was still having issues. And then my dietitian turned around to me and was like, I think you're lactose intolerant as well. So I was like, grand, my diet is going to turn into nothing because like cheese and milk and yogurt, I love these things. And she was like, look, it's that or pain and all these issues and stuff. So I was like, grand, no, fine. So I cut them out, got 100% better. Loads of my issues with food just seemed to evaporate as soon as I cut out these two major things. And I was like, this explains a lot. So yeah, I am, well, officially now I am fully celiac because I had another blood test done about a year ago. So this timeline is about 3 years. So I have been officially off gluten for about 3 years now. Was it 2 years? Yeah, sorry, 2 years this November. They did another blood test there recently I think about 8 months ago. And I am now officially fully celiac. And I asked my dietitian about this, and she said, well, because you've completely cut out gluten, this can happen. So it's why we don't recommend people go on completely gluten-free diets. We suggest they just cut down to low gluten diets if that's what they're wanting to do, because over time, if you don't have any gluten in your diet, your body forgets how to process it and you naturally become a celiac. So warning to anyone out there who is thinking of going fully gluten-free for no reason, maybe just try a lower gluten diet, so like swap out bread for sourdough, because it will probably save you in the long run, and money as well, because believe me, a gluten-free diet is hella expensive. But no, okay, so the main point for this reason, sorry, that was a bit just explaining everything so you understand. So the major thing for me now with this is eating out, and one of my favourite foods is Chinese food, which was a big hit to me when I learned that I could no longer have it, because unfortunately soy sauce, even though it used to be made gluten-free, is now made using gluten. So that's a bit of a boo-hoo, sad for me issue. But no, it was a friend's birthday there over the weekend, and another friend was like, look, as a treat for your birthday, I'll treat us all to Chinese. And I was like, oh, grand, wonderful. I know a place that does gluten-free Chinese in the area, because I've eaten there a few times before, and never had an issue. Yeah, I've never had an issue. Well, there was one issue, but it wasn't a big issue, so that's not relevant to this video. So my friend was like, grand, look, I'll leave it, you just get everyone's orders and I'll leave it up to you to phone in the Chinese order, so that you're not having to go through me and we possibly mess it up and then you get into trouble, like dietary wise. And I was like, yeah, sure, grand. So rang up, put in my order, said I wanted a gluten-free black bean sauce, which was my one, which on their menu is gluten-free. So usually never an issue. The woman on the end of the phone was like, yeah, that's grand, no problem. Half an hour. So I said, grand, I'll be there in half an hour to pick it up. Went, picked it up. The first thing that should have probably told me there was going to be an issue with this was we never got the drinks that came with the order. Joys. And then the second thing that definitely tipped me off was when I opened up my rice packet thing, and it was egg fried rice. And I'm gonna go in, oh dear, because contrary to popular belief, egg fried rice has soy sauce in it, so I can't eat it. And I was like, oh, well, okay. Well, the others can eat it, it's not a bother. I had some extra rice already made in the fridge because my puppy dog is also gluten intolerant. She really struggles with anything gluten, so I have to make her like a special diet as well. So usually so what I usually do is I bulk cook a lot of stuff for me, and then I give a little bit to the dog, as long as it's healthy for dogs. So yeah, I usually have a lot of rice pre-cooked in the fridge, which grand, fine, no problem. Start getting out the boxes with all the food, hand it out to everybody, and then I'm looking at my two, well, the one I ordered gluten-free, and then I was looking at it and it's like, they haven't actually marked this as gluten-free. And they normally do, they usually put like GF on the top of the box just to let you know that they did do it. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe it was just an oversight, because technically there was no other duplicate dish. So I was like, maybe it's just that they didn't need to mark it, because again, no duplicate dish was asked for, like non-gluten free. So I was like, grand, sure, fine, eat it. And then started to not feel well about 45 minutes later. So this is usually when food starts to digest through. My tummy started to hurt, and I was like, oh no, oh please no. So no one else in my family or in like my household is gluten free, so I didn't have anyone else to ask if what was going on, like so I spent the entire weekend feeling very sorry for myself with celiac flare-up. I'm slowly starting to feel better today, but it was not pleasant, and I barely slept, and I felt very, very poorly. So that Chinese is now off my list. Now, I do know how to make Chinese myself. I've had to go up and look up recipes and stuff. And if you cannot have soy sauce, you can have tamari or a gluten-free soy sauce, if you can get your hands on it. Now, I usually recommend going to Asian markets for this, because you'll get like a huge bottle of it for quite cheap. If you don't have access to a to an Asian market, you can get gluten-free soy sauce in Tesco's in their gluten-free range, and usually as well down your local health food store. So if this is of help to you, grand. So yeah, it's just sometimes it's nice not to have to cook everything or bulk make stuff and like freeze it. It's just nice to be like, oh, I feel like this, I'll go get this. Now, I wish this was the only time that I had an issue with ordering things gluten-free. But it is not. Another time I went to a certain street food place that sells specifically sandwiches. Now, I'm not going to say their name, but what rhymes with boo boy. So yeah, now there's several of these chains around my area, And I've never usually had a problem with them, bar this one that I went to. And I asked for gluten-free bread, because they usually have it frozen out the back, and it's lovely that I actually have somewhere that I can go out and eat when I'm on my work, when I'm out, that accommodates all of my issues. So yeah, I asked for the gluten-free bread, and I get a scoff going, "Oh, you're one of those." And I was like, I was really taken back. I didn't actually get to say anything, because I was like, what? Excuse me? That's very rude. So anyway, he changes his gloves, goes and gets me my gluten-free bread, starts making it. And then as he's making my sandwich up, he reaches across, picks up a glutinous roll, brings it next to mine, puts it on a piece of paper, and then with the same hand that he has just touched the gluten with, touches my sandwich again. And I was like, excuse me, I can't eat that now. And he full on said to me, "Excuse me, like, what do you mean? This is just one of those fad diets, isn't it?" And I was really insulted. I said, "No, I'm really sorry, but I actually am a celiac. That's going to be very dangerous for me. I can't eat that now. You have to start over again." And he was a bit like shocked that I actually was saying that it was a proper allergy. And I was like, "Yeah, I can't have that now." So he's like, oh, all right, I'm sorry. But he was still very condescending to me, and it wasn't very pleasant experience. He then went off, took the gluten-free bread that he touched, threw it away, went and got me another one. And then again, he did the same thing. As he was preparing my gluten-free sandwich, he went and touched someone else's bread with the gloves, and then went back to my one. And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to go now, because I can't eat that again." And he was like, "Oh, what are you on about?" And I'm like, "You just did it again. You touched the gluten." And I was like, has this guy had no food preparation training or anything? Now, it was very quiet in the shop that day. Well, not too, okay, so it was pretty quiet. There was me and there was one other lady. And then I think they were getting online orders, which was why he was also, doing other things. Because I would understand if it was me and there was a huge queue of people and he was rushing and he forgot. But, there was another person on, and even he was saying, "Look, dude, I'll take over. I'll do the gluten-free one. You can deal with everything else." And he's like, No, I've got this." Very, rude and dismissive. And then his manager came out after the second time and was like, "Excuse me, what's going on?" So I had to explain to her as well that I'm a celiac, and that I was trying to, have my order, get my lunch, but that this was the second time he contaminated my food. And she was like, oh, I'm really sorry about this. And then she kind of gave out to him. I'm guessing this wasn't the first time it had happened, with the way she really laid into him. She pulled him out and laid into him. Then she came out specifically and made my sandwich for me. And I was like, "Thank you very much." And she was extremely apologetic and was very, "This will never happen again. I'm really, really sorry." But it left me feeling really bad about myself, because I don't like feeling like a burden. This is one of my things. So especially with having my diagnosis now, it makes me feel a lot better, because it also explains a lot of issues that I had as a child. And a lot of people just put it down to me being a picky eater. And it was like, no, actually I had reasons for this. But no, eating out, especially now, and even eating at home, is a big issue. Other people are afraid to cook for me, and I don't like feeling like a burden, especially if I'm helping them cook it and they're like, "Oh, I'll just add this," and actually I can't have that, and I'm sorry, and then they've ruined the dish and we have to start again. I don't like feeling like that. And I left the shop feeling horrible because I got this guy in trouble. And I was like, but wait, if I'd have just been quiet and eaten the contaminated food, because this was the thing, he touched the bread with the gluten sandwich. Now, I'm not so bad that would fully affect me, but it could have had tummy ache issues. And again, with celiac, your immune system attacks your stomach lining. So even if you have a little bit of gluten and you don't fully feel the effects of it, it could be that you've had an internal reaction and you're damaging yourself basically through eating it without knowing sometimes. So I was like, that I could have, but the thing was, he was doing that constantly, so he could have once he contaminated the bread, he could have contaminated the salad that went into it, and he could have contaminated the fillings. So like, say if I went for my plant patty that I like to do, or even if I went for my steak and cheese one. Again, if he was touching it with contaminated gloves, that's more and more gluten going into my gluten-free sandwich that could have really done some damage. And I left feeling horrible, because I was like, yeah, I got that guy in trouble, but that guy could have really, really damaged my health. Now I know for a while there was a big food fad for going gluten-free, and that's probably where he came from. Was like people ordering gluten-free bread and then not actually really being celiac. But if someone asks for gluten-free bread or something gluten-free, 9 times out of 10, I will tell you personally, that person is asking for a reason. And they would not ask for you to avoid a certain food group or a certain food item in their meal if it wasn't for a genuine reason. Now, sometimes it can be, oh, when I eat that, it makes me feel funny and I don't like the taste of it. That's perfectly fine, because someone could have a very mild allergen to something that like irritates them, but it's not enough that it's like a full-blown allergic reaction. So this is also something people need to learn. An allergic reaction is not always your throat closing up and you going into anaphylaxis, because that doesn't happen with celiac. With celiac, it causes your immune system to attack itself internally. You don't get the gasping for breath and the full-on puffing like with a cat allergy. Sometimes you see someone who picks up a cat and they're allergic to it and their eyes puff shut and they can't breathe and they're coughing. That's one type of allergic reaction. Another type of allergic reaction is like you touch something you're allergic to and your hand goes puffy and it gets itchy, so you have to take an antihistamine. It's like that with food. You could say you're allergic to tomatoes, but it's not a full-blown allergic reaction of, again, hives breaking out and anaphylaxis. It's just your tongue feels itchy and your throat gets very sore, and then when you eat it, your stomach gets really painful. Because that's like what happens with lactose intolerance. You eat milk-based products, or you eat something with lactose in it that you can't process, and you get a lot of gas, you get a lot of bloating, and you get a lot of other issues. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. So it's genuinely painful, especially if you get the trap gas from it and the bloating. Oh, you feel like absolute insert emoji here. And I think people need to take food allergies and people saying that they can't have something in their diet more seriously, instead of being like, oh, it's a fad, or oh yeah, sure, we'll do that, and then not actually doing it or conveying it to the chef. I mean, these are just 2 small examples. I've had more examples, but I don't want to go into every single example because this video would be far too long. But no, it's just something that really grinds my gears, because it makes it very hard for people to eat out or enjoy eating out, because you're constantly worried about did the kitchen follow through with what they said? Is this actually gluten-free? If I eat this, am I actually going to die? Or am I going to feel like I'm dying? Now, this is why a lot of celiacs also don't eat out, because of the risk of cross-contamination and stuff like that. And that's so sad, because I feel like if people were just even a 10th more understanding, the world would be A, a much better place, but B, a lot more people could enjoy things. So I know curry usually is gluten-free. There's certain curries you can't have. So a korma, you can go out, plain rice, chicken korma, usually safe. You can go out to a carvery a lot of the time, and you can have the meat and you can have the veggies and the mashed potato, as long as you don't have lactose intolerance. But I mean, sometimes a little bit of mashed potato is worth the risk. And then the gravy as well is made without gluten, because they use cornstarch as a thickening agent or something like that, which is grand. So there's certain things that you can go out and eat in, and it's fine, and everything's contained in dishes and they're not contaminated or cross-contaminated. So small things like that are great. I do have another restaurant near me that accommodates as well, and it's lovely, because they keep certain items that are classed as gluten-free in a fridge, in a freezer, and they're contained and stuff. So then you ask for it, you say, look, this needs to be gluten-free. So instead of taking one out of the display thing, they go out to the back, they get it from the freezer, they defrost it for you, and you eat it that way. Grand, wonderful. Thank you so much, people that actually do have accommodations for food allergens. But I do think the world has a lot further to go before, everybody has the ability to eat out safely. Now, I'm not nearly as severely celiac as another person could be. So for some people, just going into a supermarket for them could be dangerous, because if they even just breathe in like dust particles from flour in the air, it can have a serious reaction. So again, I'll add one more issue. This is something that happened to me recently. Like, my local store, Aldi, I'm going to call them out on this, used to do gluten-free flour, which was great. They had it in the gluten-free section, wonderful. And then one day it disappeared from the gluten-free section when I needed it, and I was looking around for it going, where is this? Where's my gluten-free flour gone? And I was walking around the shop looking, and then I spotted it. And where did I spot it? Right next to the glutinous flour, in the flour and the baking section. And I was like, you what? I can't buy that now. And a lot of people saying, well, why couldn't you buy it now? So it was right next to it. And with flour, how usually when you open it up, there's always a bit at the top of the bag. And the other thing that happens is when people pick it up, any flour on the bottom, or any flour that's like burst or is laying over it, moves and shifts and like drifts away and then lands on the gluten-free stuff. So then you'd pick up your gluten-free bag, which was right next to the glutinous bag, right? It would then be contaminated. You would bring it home, and if there is even just a little bit, like, again, depending on how celiac you are, a little bit of the dust of it on top of the bag, you'll then open the bag, pour your flour into your bowl, and you've dusted off gluten into it. So I was like, I went to a guy who was stocking the shelves, and I said very politely, excuse me, why have you moved the gluten flour here? Like the gluten-free flour into the gluten flour section? And they said, oh, well, that was because head office said that it needed to be moved there. And I'm like, but nobody who needs gluten-free flour can buy it now. And I got told, look, I'm really sorry, I can't go against what head office said, but why can't you buy it now? And I said, well, it's contaminated. And he's like, oh, I see what you mean. 'Cause I was showing him where the dust was and like how it was going to contaminate. And he was like, oh, thank you for explaining that to me. I didn't know. I'll let head office know, but also send them an email. So I did. A few of my friends did as well, because I know a few friends who have food allergies as well. And it was just feeling very discriminated against, basically, because they didn't understand why the gluten-free stuff should stay in the gluten-free section. Never got a response to my email, I hasten to add. And now the gluten-free flour is now no longer in the shop at all. So again, I went back in and I said, because this has been going on for about 6 months at this point. I went back in and I was like, excuse me, where did the gluten-free flour go? Like, you don't stock it anymore. And they were like, oh, well, sales dropped dramatically, so head office decided it wasn't a good enough seller, so they've dropped it. And I was like, can I just ask, did the reason it stopped, like, did the sales drop happen as it was moved in with the gluten flour? And they said, well, yeah, it was around then. The decline's been over the past, like, 4 or 5 months when I went in to talk to them. In this particular store, and then it's happened in another store in the last month as well. And I said, well, that's very interesting. I did send them an email, and I did explain to them why you can't put gluten-free flour right next to gluten flour. And they're like, oh yeah, no, I remember you talking to me about that. And I was like, So, and I warned you it would drop, and I emailed them, and they never emailed me back, and they said, look, we'll put it up the food chain again and just remind them, but don't hold your breath for it coming back into stock. So I was like, okay, back to my local health food store I go, where it's like twice the price. So yeah, Aldi, that was a dick move to do. Just calling you out right now. Dickish. Just because you think something is selling great and you want to move it into a proper section, if it is for an allergen, you keep it away from the other allergen. How many times can I say that? But yes, I also have a couple of other allergies that are easy enough to avoid, so like banana and avocado are two other food allergens, which again are very easy to avoid in the grand scheme of things. It just means no more banana bread, but I never felt well after eating it anyway, so that was fine. And I mean, I'll never get to experience avocado on toast again, But c'est la vie. I'd rather be alive and happy and not be having allergic reactions every other day, because I mean, overtaking antihistamines is not a way to go. But no. So yeah, just if you're watching this and it's taught you something about like food allergens, that's great stuff. If you've come here because you also have a food allergen and you're like, woo, sister, stand with me. Great, wonderful. Comment down below what your allergen is and what you have to do to accommodate it. That would be great to hear from other people who are like me. Because I know a lot of the time we are few and far between, and that's why we're not accommodated for as much in terms of accessibility to food. It's because, it might be 1 in every 1,000 people who have celiac. So why should we accommodate the 1 instead of the 999? But again, a little bit of inclusivity would just is very nice. And I will admit to Aldi, they do the bread, they do the biscuits, and they do the pasta, and they also stock cereal. So this is great. And they also then have started stocking oat milk and soy milk and almond milk, which is great for those of us with lactose intolerance as well. And they did for a while have vegan cheese in, which was great, but then that disappeared and I don't know where it went. So I have to go back to Super Value for that, which is grand. It's just a bit pricier, but end of the day, you know, sometimes you just got to pay that extra bit of dollar, which is just annoying, especially with the rising cost of house, like living, rent, food, bills, everything is going up, which means that the gluten-free and the lactose-free stuff is going up as well, which makes my already higher food bill skyrocketing because I have to accommodate me and my needs. And it's like, oh yes, we're going to double the price of everything. So something that used to be like $3.50 is now up to almost €5. And I'm like, I can do without cheese. I don't need cheese. And then you're like, I don't need that soya yogurt either. And it's like starting to get to the point where I'm looking at my milks going, I could do without it. And then I'm also in trouble because I've got like very easily broken bones. They've got a low bone density. So I actually do need calcium, but they're making it nearly impossible for me to afford what I need to eat. But yeah, sorry about that rant. I know this video is a bit longer. So I will probably wrap it up and leave it there, or like I said, I'll be ranting for hours. So anyway, kittens, take care of yourself. If you have food allergens, make sure you avoid them like the plague. I don't want you getting sick. Take care of your mental health as well, my lovelies. Don't forget to have a drink. Eat something, even if it's just a cookie. And, you know, take your meds if you need to. All my love, kittens. See you in the next one. Ciao!